We are getting camera ready because we are going Hollywood, Houston style. Great Day starts now.
From the KHOU 11 studios, it's Great Day Houston. And now, here's your host, Deborah Duncan.
Good morning and welcome to Great Day. As you know, movies are a multi-billion-dollar industry, and there are several cases where Houston has gotten a piece of the business. Instead of going to Hollywood, on today's show, we flip the script, and Hollywood is coming to us. Houston has been the backdrop for some major blockbusters, Academy Award winners, and key influential films. In the next hour, we're looking back at some of our favorite movies shot on location in the Bayou City. Our first stop on this star-studded tour takes us back to this Academy Award-winning film from 1995. See if you remember this one. Lights, cameras, action. What turned our mission control operators into heroes was what happened after the launch of Apollo 13 in the spring of 1970. The rest, as they say, is history. The story was retold on location in Houston in the Academy Award-winning Apollo 13.
Hey, we've got a problem here.
What did you do?
Nothing. I stirred the tanks.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we have a problem.
Apollo 13 came out to Space Center Houston 20 years ago, and we were a very young center. You know, we opened back in 1992. We got the call from Ron Howard that they wanted to come out here and participate with Space Center Houston to promote and produce the film. I mean, that was a huge opportunity.
We have a main bus being undervolt.
We have a lot of things that relate back to Apollo 13, including the scrubber that was actually built in mission control. When they had to move into the lunar lander and they had to use that basically as a lifeboat, it was only designed to support 2 people, so they had to modify it to support 3.
Those CO2 levels are going to be getting toxic.
Well, I suggest you gentlemen invent a way to put a square peg in a round hole.
They came up with what they kind of affectionately dubbed the mailbox, which is this invention that included duct tape and flight books and all kind of cobbled together to meet the needs of the crew.
We got to find a way to make this fit into the hole for this, using nothing but that.
When Ron Howard was trying to put together this documentary, essentially, he wanted to recreate that environment of microgravity. And so he approached NASA, and they started working together, and they agreed to fly the crew in the KC-135. And it flies a series of parabolas. So it goes out over the Gulf of Mexico, and it'll make a steep turn up, and then it kind of goes in this arc. And as it's going over the top, everything in the inside essentially gets thrown into the air, and everyone floats for 12 to 20 seconds. And everyone was excited about it except for Kevin Bacon, who eventually caved and said, okay, you know, he didn't want to be the only guy that didn't want to fly. And they filmed inside, and Ron Howard was amazed at how much footage they were actually able to shoot inside.
We've got a computer restart.
I'm going to reconfigure the RCS.
We've got a big flight. We've got multiple caution and warning, Houston.
One of the beautiful things about Houston, Texas, is that we are the home to the astronaut corps. We are home to Johnson Space Center. And that is really profound when you think about it. We have an organization that their sole purpose is to take people, take the best among us, and to put them into these spacecraft and launch them into space. I mean, it's incredible. And once they're up there, we do amazing research on board the International Space Station. We push the boundaries of human knowledge by going to the moon, by launching spacecraft that haven't yet been proven. Really, it's amazing, and it's a central part of what we try to do here at Space Center Houston, is take that profound story and relate it to the public.
Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here.
A lot of people say that Apollo 13 was NASA's most successful failure. We had astronauts on their way to the moon, heading nearly 300,000 miles out from our home planet, from their homes, their family, everything they knew. And we had this catastrophe. And we realized that it was the job of the people on the ground to get the astronauts back home safely, and that's effectively what we did.
Like, they're all over the place. They keep going close to gimbal lock.
One at a time, people. One at a time.
The term failure is not an option. It's something that's really written across the mindset of the flight controllers, even nowadays, in mission control, that once they're out there and they're in that void, it is our responsibility to get them back home safely and to accomplish the mission.
Houston, we got a pretty large bang there.
Something that could have gone horribly wrong ended up being a huge success for us as an agency. And 4 more times we actually landed human beings on the surface of the moon, collected samples, and learned quite a bit. What could have been a showstopper, NASA was able to recover and continue forward with the program and do great things.
Let's get that hatch button. The limb might have been hit by a meteor. Yep.
We're taking people, we're sending them at tremendous speeds. In the case of Apollo, it was 25,000 miles an hour, sending them far away from home into lunar orbit, sending them to another celestial body. Even though it's something we've done, it's almost inconceivable that we could do it, but we did. And the fact that we accomplished that, it really is sort of a credit to humanity as a whole, that our species is innovative enough and ambitious enough to do these incredible things.
60 seconds. Lights on.
Wow, you know, that's the potential that we have.
The Eagle has landed.
When we put our mind to it, nothing is impossible.
This is Apollo Control, Houston, at 105 hours. Now.
Please welcome Houston historian and film buff Randy McKinney. And as somebody who's a Houston historian, this is one of those events that was not just in Houston, the whole world, despite the fact we are still dealing with the Cold War, despite the competition, you know, with Russia, the whole world was crossing their fingers and centered on what was happening in Houston and up above.
You're right. Everyone just stood still and just waited to see. And the real heroes were not only astronauts, but also Mission Control here in Houston, and put Houston once again on the face of the nation. They were looking to us for guidance to get these folks back home.
I remember interviewing Lovell after he had written the book Apollo 13. He goes, I think they might make a movie out of this. I don't know. And I said, well, who would you like to, play? He goes, I don't know, maybe Tom Hanks. Of course, we're going, one of the biggest stars on the planet at the time, because they had Gary Sinise and Tom Hanks just came off of Forrest Gump.
They just finished doing Forrest Gump, also won the Academy Award. So it was one of those situations where these are 2 big blockbuster stars. Bill Paxton, also Ed Harris, Kevin Bacon. They all came to Houston, spent lots of time here filming the movie, learning, actually training about how to really become astronauts so they could be authentic. And there's this great story about Bill Paxton tells it, where Tom Hanks and Bill Paxton and Kevin Bacon are driving in a car. There was construction on NASA Road 1 at the time.
What does everybody ask when they come to Houston and they're hungry? Is there a great Mexican food restaurant or barbecue, right? Yeah.
The 2 things, the 2 eateries that people are often asking about. Yes, they got lost trying to find this Tex-Mex restaurant, and they just couldn't end up finding it. They ended up in Friendswood. But what they said was Houstonians were very generous, helped them navigate back to NASA, which is kind of ironic. But
yeah, can you imagine that, like Forrest Gump showing up in your restaurant going, hey, we got lost, and we were,
Well, they were in a tiny little rent-a-car, little Corolla, just, trying to get their way around the city. So it was kind of interesting.
And kind of watching the progression of, let's say, Ron Howard, somebody that a lot of us came to know as a child actor with Happy Days and the whole back in the 70s, who had now moved into being a movie producer. But, the thing that's so amazing about all of what happened with the space program right here in Houston is the international impact it had. A lot of kids who were in school in the 70s remember Skylab, where you could really keep in check with what the astronauts were doing, so it brought it home.
It continued to capture the imagination of the young people as well. You're right. From 1973 to 1979, Skylab was what everyone was watching. And the shuttle program, too. People don't really know this much about it, but the shuttle program actually started in the 70s. We associate it mostly with the 80s, the early 80s. The first successful shuttle launch was 1981, but really it kind of came to birth with Nixon in the 1970s.
And Randy, thank you as usual. If you would like more information on Space Center Houston, just log on to our site at greatdayhouston.com. It really is a great place to take, especially your kids, for a great education. I always love how that Apollo 13 movie ends. It was kind of like the Super Bowl for the space program. Hey, speaking of sports, when high school football is in high gear, there's no better place to be than at a game on Friday nights. So can you guess which Hollywood film was the last to shoot at the historic Astrodome? I just gave you a hint, by the way. We'll go on location to share the answer next.